The action link helper that we just used is one of many HTML helpers available inside of a view. The purpose of an HTML helper is to make it easy to create small blocks of HTML. There are helpers to create inputs, links, forms, validation messages, labels, and more. Many of these helpers are quite intelligent. For instance, in the code snippet on the screen, we're calling html.editor4 and passing in an expression that references a property on our model. Editor4 can walk up to that property and examine its type, determine that first name is a string, and therefore what it needs to do is emit an input type equals text. If instead we were using editor4 against a Boolean property, then editor4 could produce a checkbox input. Let's use a few of these in our application. Inside of our index view, let's give ourselves the ability to edit any particular restaurant review, because the edit scenario is going to involve a lot more HTML helpers than we see here. So inside of a span that's aligned to the right, I'm going to use html.actionLink to create a link with the text edit, and it points to the edit action of the current controller. When we go to edit any particular review, we're going to need to pass along the ID of the review that needs editing. I'm going to do that with route values. So I will say new ID equals, and set that equal to item.id, and that should produce the link that we need. So that last parameter there, that's just additional values that we need to inform the routing engine about that we need inside of the URL. So it says, oh, you need an ID. I know how to put that into a URL for you. And we now have a nice edit link on every review. Of course, if we click that right now, we don't have an edit view as yet. So let's actually take a look at the controller and then build a view for this. So let's go to our reviews controller, and down here towards the bottom should be the destination for our link. This is the edit action that responds to an HTTP GET. The ID should be in the URL. That will automatically be passed in as a parameter to us. All we need to do is go to our data source and find the corresponding restaurant review. I just happen to have a find by ID method available, so we will say that the review equals reviews.findById, and we'll pass that into our view as the model to use. Let's add the view. I'll right click and say add view. We're building the edit view against Razor. We're still strongly typed against type restaurant review, but this time I want to scaffold out an edit view. I'll click add, and here's our edit view. Let's change a few things around. Instead of saying restaurant review here, let's say review for model.restaurant.name, because now we're working against a single restaurant review, not a list of reviews, so a model is the review. We'll have an editor for the rating. The user can change the rating. The user can change the body. We don't necessarily want to change the created date, so let's remove that piece. Now we'll do a build, and we can come out and refresh our view. And now this is the edit screen where we can change this review around. So let's do this. Let's look at some of these HTML helpers and see what they're actually emitting for us. We can do that by looking at the source code. So I will put this over here on the right. Let's find out what html.beginForm does. That simply emits a form tag whose action is automatically populated for us so that we post back to the correct URL. We're going to once again post back to the edit action of the reviews controller so it can apply any changes that have been made inside of here. A little further down, you can see html.hiddenFor. What we're asking for there is a hidden input that's based on the model.id. Go a little further and we have html.labelFor. That's building a label where the for attribute is automatically populated with the name of this property, which is rating. Following that is html.editorFor. We want an editor for the rating. That will build an input type equals text. And notice how the ID and the name have been set to the name of the property. So we want an editor for rating, and we get an input whose ID and name is equal to rating, and whose type is equal to text, and whose value is automatically populated with the value of that rating property. This is really what HTML helpers are all about, because we could come in and certainly say input type equals text, value equals, and then try to output the model.body. And we still have to set the ID and name, But all that can be taken care of for us by using that editor for. And one of the particular things to notice about this is that the names of these form inputs match property names on our model. If you remember the discussion we had in the last module about model binding, we know that the MVC framework will go out and look for things by name. So if we tell the MVC framework that we need a rating, it's going to look for something called rating. Again, it will look for it in the query string, it'll look for it in the route values, but it also looks for it in posted form values, and that's where it's going to find it once the user has applied some changes and clicked the submit button. So let's actually go back to the controller, because what we haven't done as yet is modify the edit action that is the destination for that form post. Remember also in the last module we talked about action selectors. Action selectors like HTTP GET, saying this action is only available when the request is a GET request. Here we have an action selector HTTP POST, so we're saying that this particular edit method, it is the destination for an HTTP POST. What we can do inside of here is pull out the review that is going to be updated. I'm going to invoke a magic method called try update model. We'll be talking more about try update model in the coming modules, but essentially that invokes model binding in the MVC framework. It's going to go out and look for values in the request that it can move into that particular model object. So a review has a body, therefore let's go and try to find a body somewhere. It's going to find it in the posted form values and push that value that the user entered into the model for us. If everything works, we can redirect to the index action. Otherwise, we can re-render this view and let the user try to edit this again. We'll see why that becomes important when we start talking about validation. For now, let me just move this review out here. And actually, I don't like the try-catch logic. I'm just going to remove that. And we're going to change this around a little bit. So we can say if try update model was successful, then we will redirect to the index action and return the view. Notice I'm not calling save anywhere. That's something that we're going to have to come back and do when we actually wire this thing up to a database. For right now, everything is in memory, so try update model. Once it pushes those values into my model, that is going to make the changes. It's effectively going to be saved in memory. So with all this in place, let's do another build. And come out, and just for good luck, let's refresh this page. That's going to issue the GET request that says I want to edit the review with an ID of 1, and let's just change this around. We can change the rating from a 9 to a 10, click Save, and you can see that was properly applied to our model. Edit this again, make this a 5, save foo into the body, and that's what we save. But the goal of this exercise was to learn how HTML helpers can build some of these elements for us so that we don't have to take a long time typing things out like individual input statements. We want an editor, it can give us an input. We want a label, it can do that too. And all of the information it's showing, like this body label and this rating label, that's all taken from metadata from the model. So what is the name of the property? Oh, the name of the property is rating? We'll make the text of the label rating. If you're wondering what other HTML helpers might be available, then you can see them all here in the IntelliSense. We have the ability to create checkboxes, we have the ability to create list boxes, radio buttons, and validation messages. There are many helpers available, and we'll be using more of them as we move through this course.